And thank you. Oh, sorry. Welcome, everyone, and thank you, Chris, for the opportunity to talk about preparing to transfer today. My name is Anna Jane Cribbs, and I'm one of the academic advisors primarily at the Middletown campus here at Laurel Ridge. And I'm joined by one of my colleagues this afternoon, and I'll give her a chance to introduce herself before we dive in.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Jocelyn Priest. I'm also an academic advisor at the Middletown campus, but I do serve special populations at all of our campus locations.
Thank you, Jocelyn. All right, so let's talk transfer. Now, preparing to transfer and eventually making it happen is a process. It's a three-part process. First, you must prepare. Next, you must plan. And finally, you must succeed. So by the end of our presentation today, our goal is that you will understand the elements associated with the transfer process and feel confident that you will succeed moving forward. A quick note before we kind of jump in, we will have time for questions at the end of our presentation. So please hold any questions until then. But if you have a question and you don't want to forget about it, you can go ahead and type it in the chat as we're going through the presentation, and we will answer it at the end. All right. So why transfer at all? This is definitely a question that one should ask themselves before deciding to dive into the transfer process. Oops, sorry, got off there. One of the main forces urging students to complete their bachelor's degree is the simple fact that many professional career fields today require a bachelor's degree to even get an interview with an employer. This is the nature of how formal education and the job market have evolved in today's society. For many employers, the fact that you have a bachelor's degree lets them know that you have a certain level of knowledge, skill, and experience to be a worthwhile investment and addition to their company. So how does earning a bachelor's degree add up to this level of attainment? So your upper level coursework that you'll get at the bachelor's degree level is equivalent to upper level skills and knowledge. Also, when pursuing a bachelor's degree, you'll have exposure to additional mentors and professors and create additional professional contacts and exposure to current trends in whatever field you're studying. You'll also have expanded opportunities for internships and experiential learning. So maybe you do an internship or a field placement throughout your bachelor's degree, or even studying abroad. That can lead to broader job placement opportunities when you graduate, or maybe even get you a connection that will get you a job. Associate degrees don't always stand alone, and this is a big piece. Associate of Science, so AAS, and AANS, so Associate of Arts and Sciences degrees, are called transfer degrees on purpose. They are mostly made up of general education classes that are going to prepare you to step into those higher level subject specific courses at the bachelor's degree level. And you really need those content specific classes to finish out that degree and get a job in a specific field. So kind of following up on that, bachelor's degrees do stand alone. So, if you have a bachelor's degree in engineering, you're going to be prepared to be an engineer. The Associate of Science degree in engineering here is just going to prepare you to enter that bachelor's level. It's not necessarily going to prepare you to jump out and be an engineer. So yeah, like I've said, concentrated study in your major, you're going to be an expert or at least more of an expert by the end of that bachelor's degree, and be better prepared to enter a career in your field. Next slide, please. Okay, so kind of the big picture, money, what everybody wants to know about. So besides the changing correlation between the job market and level of education, another main reason to transfer after completing your associate's degree is all about the money. In the grand scheme of things, those who earn bachelor's degrees do tend to earn more money over the course of their working and professional lives than those who don't. And also lifetime earnings tend to increase as the level of education increases. You can see this logic represented in the graphs on the slide below, which are sourced from a 2021 Georgetown University, so they're pretty legit. These graphs do show that lifetime earnings on average increase with level of education. Now, there are some variations and exceptions to this within each educational level that could be explained by differences in fields of study and the occupations that exist within each field. Cost of living factors, and yes, even today, gender, race, and ethnicity are still factors that contribute to variations within this model. So, like, for example, there are certain, skilled trades fields that might make more than someone at a bachelor's degree, depending on what field you're going into. So how do you personally know if earning a bachelor's degree is actually going to be a benefit to you on the dollar bill side of things? The answer is research. So, yep, you have to look up some facts, figures, and educational requirements concerning your desired occupation. Think along the lines of a dream job career here, because the prepare stage is all about big picture ideas. So, for example, if you want to be a truck driver, obviously it's probably not going to be beneficial to you to get a bachelor's degree. You need to do that specialized commercial driver's license training. But if you want to be an engineer, then you do need that, specialized bachelor's degree level of education. So that's kind of what we're saying here. And then you need to align your academic plan to the path that will set you up for the most success. And don't forget that success also means having opportunities for advancement within the job or career field you choose to pursue. If your research on your dream job or career suggests a bachelor's degree or higher for the most opportunity for success and advancement, well, then you have your answer. Next slide, please. So I keep referring to transferring as a process and the transfer process, and that's because it is. Preparing to transfer is a process for a reason. So why is that? First, consider the dictionary definition of process, which is a series of actions that produce something or that lead to a particular result. That's such as a costly manufacturing process, or how does the election process work? So now consider the steps of transferring to a bachelor program as a process, just like the manufacturing example from Merriam-Webster. In this case, the series of actions are in order: establish your timeline, decide on your path, research your options, and then make the deadline. The end result is that you produce a competitive application for admission into a bachelor's degree program and attain acceptance. This will eventually lead to the ultimate result of a bachelor's degree. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jocelyn, who is going to start to walk us through this process.
Thank you. So the first step in the transfer process action steps is really establishing that timeline. Included in these timelines are deadlines and due dates. Important things to consider when looking at these important dates is when you want to transfer and in which semester you are looking to start classes at that institution, whether it be the fall or spring semester. You may choose to transfer after completing your entire associate's degree, or you may just opt to do a semester or two and then transfer. If you fall into the category of wanting to transfer prior to completing a degree, passport courses are universally transferable that really satisfy that lower division general education requirements. And you may want to discuss this with your advisor, which of those passport courses would be beneficial for you, or opt to complete the Uniform Certificate of General Studies, which really focuses on meeting those general education requirements prior to you transferring. So we're going to work backwards a little bit. You know when you want to transfer and in which semester you want to start classes. So it's important to note that the best time to start to researching those transfer options is 1 year before you want to start classes at that new institution. So for example, if you're wanting to transfer next fall, so fall of 2023, you should really be starting that research now. So you should make a general note of that general date or time frame. And while you're at it, also make a note of application deadlines for some of your top or most interesting schools. Now, all schools are different, but most do have an application deadline for fall around March 1st and for spring around October 1st. It's important to note that some schools do have what's known as rolling admissions or later deadlines in the March and October 1st, but even so, your final semester that you're enrolled with Laurel Ridge is really too late to start doing that research, but it's never too early to start that planning process. All right, so as I'm sure you've gathered, research is very important. Anna Jane reiterated that. And we're not really talking about the research that you have to do to write a paper, but enough Googling, so to speak, to get the information that you're looking for. You want to uncover options, resources, perspective, and guidelines. So going back to uncover options, one great tool that all Laurel Ridge students have access to and really should take advantage of is a site called Transfer Virginia, which we're going to explore here for just a minute. All right, so important thing to note on, there's a lot of information here, but I'm just going to highlight the transfer partners page. So we do have our 2-year transfer partners here. Further down the page, we have our 4-year transfer partners, future transfer partners. So a lot of our schools in Virginia are listed here. So this is a good starting point if you're not sure where to start with your research. I'm just going to choose James Madison as an example so we can go through what is on that page. So we have JMU facts. So this is just quick facts about their institution. Further down the page, we have their academics information, admissions information, important dates like those application deadlines that we were talking about, the majors that they offer, campus services, clubs and organizations that they may have, and if they're military friendly. All of these, most of these at least, will have hyperlinks for you to go directly to that institution's website. So start at Transfer Virginia, then you can route out to that specific institution to get more detailed information. Okay, can you see the slideshow again? Okay, just wanted to make sure. So another resource that you should be aware of is our transfer visits and events page. That's on our website. So when you visit this page, what you should do often, I encourage you to do it often throughout your research, you will find a list of transfer schools throughout the state of Virginia, and you can then select schools that you're interested in, find the contact information for each of the institution's transfer representatives, as well as know if they're going to be on campus. So I'll just go there just real quickly so you can see what that page looks like. At the top, you'll see things that may be hosted by our institution, and then all of the transfer institutions are listed here. So Christopher Newport, they have their transfer representative listed. They don't currently have any upcoming transfer events, but you can go through here and look at the schools that you're interested in and notate that transfer representative's contact information, or when they're going to be on campus, or if they have one-on-one sessions. So in regard to those transfer representatives, like I just mentioned, those one-on-one sessions, it's really important that you do that before you're submitting any applications to their institutions, just because they're the experts on their school. They can walk you through the procedure as well as the different requirements, and they can answer any specific questions that you may have about academic life at their institution. Remember to use that transfer rep as a method for uncovering that additional perspective that you might find helpful on when you're deciding on which schools to apply for and things like that. And of course, when you're uncovering that perspective as well, don't forget about your past professors and mentors, professionals in the field that you may be interested in, as well as your academic advisor. Now, to share a few highlights concerning GAA guidelines. So first, remember that GAA stands for Guaranteed Admission Agreement, and this agreement refers to a binding document or contract between Laurel Ridge and each transfer institute. The GAA then guarantees admission or acceptance to those Laurel Ridge students who meet the criteria set forth by that transfer school. But because the details of each guaranteed admission agreement is finalized by each individual transfer school, not all guaranteed admission agreements are going to be the same. Typically, however, each will carry a minimum GPA requirement and a minimum number of completed credits. Some agreements might also require specific courses to be completed or have a maximum number of course retakes allowed or may require a letter of intent. But because all of these requirements can vary so significantly, that's why it's so important to start this research early and to make contact with those transfer representatives. So 2 final thoughts regarding the GAA. Guaranteed admission is not the only way to get accepted to an institution. Students apply competitively all the time. So if you don't meet the GAA guidelines, that does not mean that you cannot apply. That does not mean that you will not be accepted. Another note is just because you are accepted under GAA does not mean you will be accepted to the major automatically that you're interested in. So if you're accepted to the institution, but let's say your major engineering is a popular one that has an extra application. If your major has an extra application, you still have to go through that application process. You're not automatically admitted to the major just because you met the GAA guidelines. And I hope that makes sense. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Anna Jane to discuss other important aspects of the planning process.
All right, thank you, Jocelyn. So now that you've done all that awesome research, now it's time to turn all that information that you learned into action items like we talked about in our process definition. So as Mr. Wonka here is asking us, what's our plan? Go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so first off, let's talk academic planning after all this is regarding your academic career. So it is important to plan out the remaining courses you have left to complete your associate's degree and be sure you are set up to graduate in your desired semester. So you'll want to make sure that any remaining classes you need to take will be offered in upcoming semesters. Ensure you have completed any prerequisites you might need for those classes. Determine what a realistic course load is for you. And your academic advisor is absolutely a great resource for you in helping to plan out those final semesters. And so you also want to make sure when you're choosing those remaining classes that you're choosing your elective courses based on your target transfer school and program. So what I'm really talking about here are pre-major requirements. So if you have any electives left where you have a lot of choice on what classes to take, you want to make sure you've looked into your transfer school and see if there's anything that you can take here at Laurel Ridge that'll set you up to be able to start right where you need to at your transfer school. So while it might be really fun to use all those elective credits on classes like yoga and hiking, it may not be the most beneficial option in the long run to fill up all your electives with that. You can definitely take a couple of those classes, but your academic advisor and transfer representatives can really help you in planning out your final semesters of your degree. Some universities even offer documents called roadmaps or transfer guides that are extremely helpful in pointing out classes that are beneficial for students to complete prior to transferring to their school. So I'm going to let us take a look at an example of one of these roadmap documents that is for Virginia Tech's Animal and Poultry Sciences program. So Virginia Tech has really good roadmaps. A couple other schools have documents like this as well. But Virginia Tech kind of takes it a step further in breaking down classes that you have to have in order to be admitted to that major at Virginia Tech, and then also classes that are strongly recommended as well as recommended. And you can see the Virginia Tech course on the left, the Virginia Community College System, so the Laurel Ridge class in the middle, and then, or the equivalent class in the middle, and then whether that is a required, strongly recommended, or recommended course. So, some of these classes might be built into your degree. For example, you have to have a math class for all transfer-oriented degrees, but, this might help guide some of your elective choices. So you also want to be, and we'll flip back to app or presentation. When looking at these roadmaps, you also want to be efficient. So you want to complete as many pre-major requirements as possible prior to transferring, but you don't want to take too many extra credits that don't align with your degree requirements for Laurel Ridge, so align with your associate's degree requirements. Transfer schools will only take a certain number of credits, and usually, it varies with different schools, but sometimes they only take like pretty much what's required for your associate's degree. So unless you absolutely have or absolutely need to take an extra class to meet an admission requirement, it's not typically recommended to take extra classes outside of what is required for your associate's degree. And just to kind of re-emphasize that your academic advisor and your transfer representative at your transfer school are great resources in determining whether, it's going to be beneficial for you to take any extra classes. And then another just note are that competitive applications are the name of the game. So Ds do get degrees at Laurel Ridge, but those classes will not transfer to a bachelor's degree program. So if a class is a pre-major requirement and you have a D in it, you are really going to want to have a C or higher in that class, so you make sure you don't have to retake it at the four-year school. And class retakes are always an option. So go ahead and next slide for me. All right, so deciding on what you want to do after Laurel Ridge is a big decision. So there's also a personal planning aspect to this. You want to talk about your transfer plan with your support system. So friends, family, pets, whoever knows you best. They may be able to help provide valuable insight into factors that you may not have considered. Take everything into account. So take everybody's, feedback into account, but also keep in mind that this is ultimately your decision. So, everyone is welcome. You want to have as much feedback as possible and assist, to maybe factor into your decision, but ultimately it is your decision. So some of the non-academic factors that you should keep in mind when you're trying to pick out the perfect transfer school are location. So how far is it from where you live, from where you work? Are you trying to stay in, the area that you're living currently? Are you wanting to relocate to another area? How do they deliver classes, or what are the class delivery options that they offer? Do they only offer in-person classes? Are they a fully online institution or program? Is it hybrid? What are your preferences on that? If you are kind of going to be relocating to a university or college, is it rural or city? Are you going to be happy living in a rural area or in a more urban area? Kind of going along with that, transportation options. If you're relocating to a school that's kind of in a rural area, are you taking a car with you to be able to commute back and forth to where you live, where you fully live, or how are you going to get to and from campus? Another thing is housing. So are you staying in your current living situation? If you're moving, are you prepared for a roommate? Are you wanting to live on or off campus? One thing to look into is if on-campus living is an option for transfer students. So, some schools, they don't necessarily offer on-campus living to anyone but freshmen and sophomores. And a lot of times transfer students are transferring in as juniors. Or the other way around, some schools, might require students to live on campus for the first year they're at a university. Are you, okay with that? And lastly, extracurricular activities. So is there, something that you do that you're passionate about that you want to make sure you're going to be able to continue doing when you transfer to another school? So is there an on-campus activity, like a specific club you're looking for, or maybe an off-campus, activity or hobby? One example that I had recently was a student that came in to my office and wanted to make sure that their four-year transfer school was going to have a fencing club because like the kind of with fencing with swords, they wanted to make sure that they were going to be able to continue doing that. So I told him that was going to be some research that he was going to need to do. All right, so go ahead and next slide. All right, so financial plan. So we always got to talk about the money. So GoFundMe, I guess, could be an option, but seriously, how are you going to pay for completing your bachelor's degree? So FAFSA, financial aid, is always an option. You do want to make sure you're submitting your FAFSA by your school's priority deadline to ensure you're able to maximize all the funds you're eligible for. So that date should be listed. I think it's actually listed on those Transfer Virginia profile pages for most of the schools. So that's another date to keep in mind. You also want to be aware when you submit a FAFSA to another school that Laurel Ridge does not automatically award student loans. So when we're processing your financial aid, we are only awarding grants and scholarships. Other schools may, give you an entire student aid award that includes loans. So just be careful to review your financial aid package before accepting so you fully understand what you are being awarded, and if it's grant money and scholarship money that you're not going to have to pay back, or if it is loan money that you are going to have to pay back at some point. You also want to see if your school has transfer specific scholarships. So some schools have merit-based scholarships, so based on your grades. Some schools have need or income-based scholarships, work study opportunities. And so there's other ways to fund it in addition to financial aid. You are going to want to plan ahead because some schools do have earlier application deadlines to be considered for scholarships. So Jocelyn mentioned those early or those rolling admission applications earlier. Some of those schools do have priority deadlines for receiving scholarships. So that's another thing you'll want to look into when you're doing your research. So an example of a transfer specific grant is the 2-year college transfer grant. It is a state grant that most of our public 4-year and some of the private 4-year schools as well offer to students coming from a community college to a bachelor or a college or university, another college or university. So are you planning to work? I already mentioned work study opportunities, or maybe you want to look into a part-time job outside of the college. And then another thing to consider, our tuition and books are just part of the cost of attending of transferring and going to another college or university. You also need to consider adulting costs, as I like to call them, especially if you're going away from home and don't intend to live on campus. You are going to want to be attentive when you're reviewing rental contracts. So does the cost include utilities, internet? Because a rent may sound really cheap, but then, when you factor in the electric bill and the internet and water bill, if you're in a city or a more urban area, how are you getting to and from school? So if you're living off campus, are you taking a car with you, or is there public transportation? Does your school charge for parking if you're taking a car? Because a lot of colleges and universities charge students to have a parking space on campus. Are you going to be close enough to walk if you aren't planning to use a car? And then food, are you able to get a meal plan? Are you going to get a meal plan through the school? Are you going to grocery shop and prepare food yourself? And then also just living costs, any other costs, spending money. So, if you want to go out to dinner with your friends or athletic events, social activities, a lot of transfer schools have, football games, basketball games, other athletic and social events, and you want to factor in some spending money if you are interested in attending that. So go ahead and next slide. Okay, so application plan. So most applications cannot be completed overnight. Some require essays and additional documents to be sent. They're definitely going to require your transcripts. At some point, you'll want to know the difference between an unofficial versus an official transcript. An unofficial copy is one you can print right off of your My Laurel Ridge SIS portal, whereas an official transcript has to be requested via the link that you can see on that kind of second square bullet, and that has to be sent directly from Laurel Ridge to the four-year school. You'll also want to be sure you have any know of any additional GAA application requirements if you're applying through a GAA. So, for example, some schools require you to submit a letter of intent before you apply if you're planning to use the GAA. When do you need it by? You want to document all deadlines, like we've said a couple times, and delivery methods, and set your own personal due dates for compiling and refining your application materials before final submission, because you want to plan ahead, because you want to plan to submit your application before the deadline. Because many schools require all that documentation, so transcripts, essays, any other materials that are needed. Some schools require that to be received by the application due date. So you want to make sure all your materials are together, your transcripts have been requested early so that everything is received by your transfer school on time. And who can you ask about? You can ask questions about applications. You can always start with your academic advisor, although your transfer representative is going to be your best friend. They are the experts on their school and their admissions processes. They know it inside and out because they deal with it every day. Be prepared for appointments with your transfer representatives to maximize your time. Anytime you're meeting with a transfer representative, it's usually beneficial to have a copy of your unofficial transcript so that they can, review it and provide any insight as you're planning those final semesters, what classes to take, or just, maybe a little unofficial review of how your credits might transfer, anything like that. And I always recommend students make an appointment or get in contact with a transfer representative well in advance of the final application submission so they can verify, any additional documents needed, and as well as, clarify if everything is due by the application deadline or if there's a little bit of a time period after submitting the application where transcripts and other materials can still be sent. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Jocelyn, who's going to help us finish up.
All right, so at this point, you've done your research, you've created your plan. Now we're moving on to the final steps of the process, which is completing that transfer application and actually graduating. So these are basically just a bunch of reminders from some of the stuff that we have already covered. Transferring is a process. It is not a single event. It cannot be completed overnight. Remember to check in with yourself throughout that entire process. Make sure you're assessing your strengths and weaknesses and ensure you're going down a path that you're actually interested in and passionate about. It's okay to change your mind. You don't have to stick with the decision that you made at the beginning. You may find after taking a few classes that you're really just not as interested as you thought you would be, and that's totally okay. Just make sure that you do meet with your advisor to discuss other options before you make that next step of transfer. You also want to keep those transfer notes organized in an essential location for easy access. We have talked a lot about those important dates and deadlines and additional documentation that you need to submit. So if you can keep that all organized and in an easy to access place, the better it is for you to reference and the easier that process will be for you. Now, when you're making the decision on which schools you're most interested in applying to, a good rule of thumb would be to apply to maybe 1 to 3 schools, but you can certainly apply to more than that. And remember to keep checking in with your academic advisor throughout your entire time with Laurel Ridge so that you can ensure you're aligning your degree coursework with that of the transfer school. And don't forget about those transfer representatives that we have mentioned several times. All right, so now when it comes time to submit your application, you want to tailor that application to the specific school or program that you are applying to. For any personal statements that may be required, this is the time to highlight those qualities that may not be readily apparent just by looking through that application. Make sure to set yourself apart from the rest. As Anna Jane mentioned, make sure you're submitting the application before the final deadline. You should also keep in mind, like she said, all deadlines, most deadlines for institutions include all supporting documentation, which includes your transcripts. You can request those at that site, laurelridge.edu/request a transcript, or by just searching transcript on our homepage in that little search box. That'll take you right to Parchment, is the service that we use for our official transcripts. And remember to request those ahead of time, because there is a processing time for that, and you don't want to be scrambling at the last minute. All right, now at this point, you're almost to graduation. When you're approaching your last semester at Laurel Ridge, it's time to actually apply for graduation. You can complete the graduation application in your student center, which is located in your student account and your student information system. The link provided here on the slide, laurelridge.edu/graduation, will take you to more detailed instructions. If you have any issues finding that or completing it, it also gives the deadline to apply for graduation for each semester. So something fun to note, if you apply for graduation before enrollment opens for the next semester, you can enroll before the general population of students. You'll get priority registration. So this gives you more class options and better class selection, which obviously makes it easier for you to schedule your classes around existing obligations. And as I mentioned before, if you plan on transferring before graduating from Laurel Ridge, that's okay. It's just important to know when you want to transfer and ensure you're meeting the requirements for competitive admission. All right, I know that was a lot of information that we went over today, and the transfer process can certainly seem very overwhelming and daunting at first, but just remember that your academic advisors and transfer representatives are here to help you throughout that entire process, so don't hesitate to reach out for assistance. All right, and we're happy to open it up for any questions or comments that you all have.
Feel free to unmute yourself or drop questions in the chat.
Hey, I had a question.
Sure.
So in that graph, when you were showing the lifetime earnings of different things, above the doctorate, there was listed professional degrees. What was that referring to?
So that's going to kind of include doctorates and any kind of probably any other kind of graduate certificate or development beyond a doctorate degree. So there are certificates and degrees, as well as other professional degrees that aren't necessarily doctorates.
Okay, cool.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I just had a question about the when you transfer or is trying to transfer, but there's some requirements for the university. You're able to take these courses at Laurel?
In most cases, yes.
In most
If
cases.
they do have prerequisite requirements to get into a bachelor's program or general education requirements to get into their program, majority of the time you can take those classes while you're with us. If they're beyond what we offer, then you can certainly take those once you're at that institution. That will not hinder your ability to be accepted.
Okay. What if I have all the classes lined up through spring?
Mm-hmm.
Can I take them even after I get my degree, the associates?
You can, but that's something that you're going to want to talk to that transfer institution about. It depends on if you are trying to go under the guaranteed admission agreement or just as competitive admission, because not all transfer institutions will accept beyond a certain number of credits, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. And one more thing.
Sure.
This the graduate to apply to for the graduation. I was confused about that.
Yeah, so in your account, when you log into your My Laurel Ridge account and your student information system, and then that routes you to your student center, there is a link in there for you to apply for graduation. So basically what you're doing is certifying that you have completed your degree, making sure all of the information that we have on file is correct, address, name, all of that, so that our records office can certify your degree once your final grades have been posted and then send that out to you. So it's just important that we have that on file so that we can officially post your degree once we receive your final grades.
We can do that now, or do we have to wait until
Is spring your
whatever
final
the
semester?
last? This is not my final. This is my third semester, so spring will be my last. So
Yeah,
when is
Yeah,
a good time to do it?
you can apply now.
Oh, okay.
It's recommended that you apply the semester before you're going to be finishing. So if spring is going to be your final semester, you can go ahead and apply right now.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
I have another question about graduation. So I already filled it out, but how can I check if it actually went through?
So that process does take a little while. It is a manual process for our records office, but you will receive email confirmation from our graduation specialist, Crystal Fletcher. She will send you more information once your application and everything has been received.
Okay, thank you.
And if you're a spring graduate, it might not be until a little later this fall, once you enroll in your spring classes, because if you have classes to take for the spring, she can't really follow up on the application until she verifies that you're, taking the rest of those needed classes. So if you fill out a spring application, it might be a little bit longer before you hear back from her.
Okay, yeah, because this is my last semester, and next semester I won't have any classes, so I'm just taking my remaining classes this semester.
Okay, then you should be hearing from her here in the next couple weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Can you explain the GAA a little bit more?
Yeah, so they're going to be very unique to each individual school, so it's kind of hard to explain them specifically, but in general, it is an agreement between the community college, so Laurel Ridge, and the transfer institution, and it basically is a kind of a contract that says if a student meets these specific requirements, then they're guaranteed admission to that transfer university. So every school can have some different requirements. Most of them have a minimum GPA students have to receive. Many of them require students to complete an associate's degree to be eligible for that guaranteed admission. Some of them just have like a minimum number of credits that you have to complete. And they might have some additional requirements, like some schools have specific courses that you have to take within your associate's degree in order to be eligible for that. If you're interested in pursuing a guaranteed admission agreement, it's really important to kind of connect with your academic advisor and let them know that and what school you're interested in, or a couple of schools that you might be interested in attending, because we'll need to help you kind of navigate those requirements and be sure that you're set up for success and pursuing that guaranteed admission agreement. But like Jocelyn said, guaranteed admission is not the only way to get into a school. So we have plenty of students that apply competitively through the application process to a transfer school and get accepted. So just because you don't meet the requirements for a guaranteed admission does not mean that you're not going to get into that school. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so will you be able to get into the school easier if you've already had 2 years like at a community college, or is it just the same process?
It kind of depends. In a lot of cases, you know, transfer schools do prefer to see students finish that associate's degree, but it's not necessarily required. Sometimes it depends on what you're wanting to go into. Like, for example, I work with a lot of nursing students or pre-nursing students, and some transfer schools require students to be a student at their school to apply to nursing. So in some of those cases, it's more beneficial for the students to transfer after completing, you know, just a year at Laurel Ridge. But I see in most cases, you know, the associate's degree can sometimes provide for a more seamless transition, because a lot of times you have most of those general education classes done, and you're kind of prepared to step right into your major at that transfer school.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually did have a second question. If you do get into a school through like a guaranteed admissions, but you don't get into the particular major that you're looking for, what do you do at that point? What's the plan from there? How do you end up getting into that major if you're not able to transfer directly into it?
So that's a really good question. If you get into a school and then don't get into their competitive, you know, whatever competitive admission major you were trying to apply to, at that point, it would be working with your advisor at the transfer school. If you know, that major was your you know, you definitely wanted that major, to see what you could do, whether it's take a couple of other classes at the transfer school to be a more competitive applicant for that major, or, you know, you might be looking into other majors, or, you know, applying to another school if that major was the major that you wanted. That is kind of a factor in competitive admission majors, is they can't accept everybody because there's only a certain amount of seats. So if you know, knew you wanted to do that major at that school, if you were accepted to the school, you would be, at that point, it would be a conversation between you and your advisor at the transfer school to figure out a plan to get you where you need to be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I have just a quick question. I think you guys have already went over it, but I just want to ask in case.
Go for it.
I just had a question. So if I'm going into a university next semester and I still might need those like I don't know how to say it, but you know what I mean.
Yep,
If
prerequisites.
I have like, yeah, because I actually had to join here later because of situation. So I still need like one more class before I get into it. But would they still accept me and I could just take it there? Or do I have to wait another semester to take that chemistry class I need?
So it kind of depends on the school. Not all schools have like those classes as requirements to get into the school. So you might be able to, you know, go ahead and transfer to the school and start at that school. But if it's a requirement to be admitted directly into your major, you might just be admitted to the school as like an undeclared or another major until you finish that prerequisite and can be eligible for the major of your choice. Does that make sense?
We might have lost her.
I was gonna say, did I cut out or? Okay.
Any other questions? These are all great questions. We appreciate your participation.
All right. Well, we thank you all for being here today. You are very participative audience, and we appreciate all your questions. You had some good ones. So if you have any, questions, your academic advisor is going to be your best first contact if you have any transfer related questions. I think that's all I have. Thank you for being here today. Jocelyn, if you want to say anything.
Yeah, just thank you all for coming.